Have you ever felt a profound, almost unsettling truth stirring within you? A truth that society tells you to ignore. A whisper from your soul that the rules of attraction you've been taught are a grand and beautiful lie. If this message has found you, it is not by chance. It is a sign from the universe, a divine appointment for your awakening. You are here because your higher self is ready to understand the sacred, energetic dance of masculine and feminine forces that governs all of creation, especially the powerful current of desire. Prepare to have the veil lifted. And as this truth resonates deep within your being, show your alignment by liking this video, subscribing to this channel for more divine guidance, and sharing in the comments how this awakening speaks to your journey. Perhaps you'll write, "I am ready," or simply 777, to signal your soul's recognition of this profound cosmic law. Let us begin with a quote from a man who, though he spoke of earthly power, unknowingly tapped into a universal spiritual principle. Niccolò Machiavelli once observed, "Men are so simple and yield so readily to the desires of the moment that the one who will trick will always find another who will suffer to be tricked." Now, let us elevate this understanding. What if I told you that what we call love is not a random collision of hearts, but a sacred, predestined alignment of energies? What if the falling is not an accident, but a divinely orchestrated surrender? The masters of seduction throughout history, from the enigmatic Casanova to the sovereign Cleopatra, were not mere charmers. They were high priests and priestesses of human energy. They were alchemists who understood the subtle frequencies of the soul. They didn't just play on emotions, they conducted them like a grand orchestra, transforming emotional vulnerabilities into sacred vessels of devotion. They didn't just win affection, they engineered a spiritual bond, a resonance so powerful it echoed through eternity. This is not about manipulation in the way the unawakened world understands it. This is about attuning to the deepest spiritual laws of the universe. Even Machiavelli, the architect of earthly strategy, understood a fragment of this truth. He famously declared that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But he failed to articulate the higher spiritual principle at play. What is fear truly but the soul's primal recognition of immense power? And what is love, in its most potent form, but a sacred fear? The fear of losing a connection so profound it feels like losing a part of your own divine essence. By the end of our journey together today, you will not just see the world differently. You will feel your own energy shifting. You will understand the hidden spiritual script of feminine desire, the sacred codes that unlock a woman's soul. And you will learn how to position yourself, not as a player in a game, but as an unforgettable frequency, a divine masculine presence she has been praying for across lifetimes. This is not about changing who you are. It is about awakening to the magnificent, powerful being you were always destined to be, by mastering the divine and sacred rules of power. This is Machiavelli's forbidden manuscript, rewritten for the awakened soul. Allow me to weave for you a story, a spiritual parable that will feel hauntingly familiar, for it is a story your own soul has likely lived 1,000 times. Picture a man. Let us call his energy James. James is the embodiment of good intentions. He is kind. He is stable. He is a safe harbor in the tempest of life. He meets a woman whose soul carries a wild, untamed frequency. James, operating from a place of earnest desire, does everything he has been told is right. He listens with unwavering attention, memorizing the mundane details of her life, like her coffee order, believing this is the key to her heart. He sends texts that whisper, "Good morning," a predictable sunrise in her digital world. For months, his energy is a constant, a reliable, predictable, and utterly safe presence. He builds a comfortable cage of kindness around her, believing he is offering her a sanctuary. Then, one evening, the frequency shifts. She cancels their date. A vague excuse floats in the air. Something came up. The predictable sunrise fails to appear. And within a week, the universe reveals its lesson. She is now orbiting a different sun, a man whose energy is a chaotic, beautiful storm. A man who ignored her texts, who showed up late, whose presence was a question mark that left her soul guessing, yearning, and ultimately captivated. James is left shattered. his spirit crushed under the weight of his confusion. Why? His soul cries out into the void. I offered her my light. I treated her with more kindness, more reverence. Does this story not echo in the chambers of your own heart? Here is the brutal, beautiful, divine truth that the world has tried to shield you from. The divine feminine does not choose a man based on a checklist of virtues. She does not select a partner. She surrenders. She surrenders to an energy, a frequency, a spiritual force so powerful that it awakens the deepest parts of her own being. Machiavelli glimpsed this cosmic law. In his work, The Prince, he wrote that power is not something you take by force. It is something that is granted, a sacred offering from the psychology of those who submit, those who surrender. Modern society attempts to disguise this divine dynamic under the illusion of equal choice, a comforting falsehood that denies the powerful magnetic polarity between the masculine and feminine energies. But history, the great spiritual teacher, whispers a different, more profound story. Consider the Empress, Catherine the Great, one of history's most potent embodiments of the divine feminine in its sovereign form. Did she ascend to the Russian throne by being merely liked or agreeable? No, she was a force of nature. She orchestrated a coup, deposed her own husband, and ruled not with kindness, but with a calculated, divine ruthlessness that commanded respect and awe. Yet, in the sacred temple of her private life, her soul was irresistibly drawn not to safety, but to fire. She craved men like Grigory Potemkin, a man whose energy was as wild and unpredictable as the Russian winter. A man who would disappear for months, leaving her in a state of yearning, only to return with grand, sweeping gestures that created a spiritual whiplash, an emotional tide that kept her soul alive and engaged. Why? Why would a woman of such immense power crave such chaos? Because you must understand this divine law. Energetic stillness is the enemy of attraction. Predictability, no matter how comforting, is the death of passion. The soul does not come to this earthly plane for safety. It comes for growth, for expansion, for the sacred fire that forges it into something more. Machiavelli warned, "The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances." In spiritual terms, this means the unawakened soul is captivated by the illusion of depth, by the mystery of what lies beneath the surface. A woman, as an embodiment of the intuitive feminine principle, is drawn to the man whose energy feels just out of her grasp, the man who represents a spiritual challenge, a sacred mountain she feels compelled to climb. She is drawn to the man who makes her work, not for his validation, but for his attention, for access to his inner world. Think back. Reflect on the last time you saw a woman's entire being light up in the presence of a man. Was it when he showered her with predictable compliments? Or was it when his presence challenged her, when his energy subtly tested her, forcing her to rise to a new level of her own being? The sacred texts of psychology reveal this dynamic through what they call attachment theory. The dance between the anxious and the avoidant, the cosmic push and pull, the spiritual hot and cold, creates an addictive emotional current. These are not mere feelings, they are energetic spikes that awaken the soul from its slumber. The human brain, in its beautiful simplicity, confuses this spiritual uncertainty, this divine tension, for immense value. This is not manipulation. It is the raw, unfiltered mechanism of human nature, a reflection of the universe's own dance of expansion and contraction. Machiavelli's own mentor, the formidable Cesare Borgia, was a master of this energetic principle. He would reward loyalty with what seemed like cruelty and punish defiance with unexpected mercy, keeping both his allies and his enemies in a constant, breathless state of suspense. His true power came not from his actions, but from the unknown, from the fear of what sacred, unpredictable move he might make next. Perhaps this is your great mistake. You have been playing a simple game of checkers, moving with predictable, logical steps, while her soul has been engaged in a cosmic game of chess, anticipating moves 5 lifetimes ahead. But here is the secret that no one dares to speak aloud. The divine feminine in her heart of hearts knows she is being drawn into this energetic dance. She recognizes the spiritual test, and a part of her, the part that craves awakening and transformation, wants it. She yearns for it. Now we must descend into the deepest chamber of this sacred temple, to uncover the hidden truth of female desire, the reason why the feminine soul seems to secretly worship the very forces that challenge her freedom. Let me tell you another story, one that you have lived but have never truly understood. A man meets a woman. He is not like James. His energy is a fortress. He is confident, radiating a frequency of self-possession. He can be aloof. His attention, a precious resource he does not give away freely. He is unpredictable, a wild current in a sea of stagnant ponds. He doesn't text back immediately, not as a tactic, but because his focus is on his divine purpose. He doesn't explain himself because his actions speak with a clarity that words could never achieve. When she asks where they stand, seeking the comfort of a label, he doesn't offer her a cage. He smirks, a gentle challenge in his eyes, and his energy communicates. Why? Do you need a label to feel secure in this moment? Can you not simply trust the energy between us? Logically, she should walk away. Society has told her, this man is a red flag, a danger to her peace. But she doesn't. She can't. Instead, she finds herself lying awake at night, her thoughts consumed not by anxiety, but by a thrilling, vibrant wonder. What does he want? Does he even see the true depth of my soul? And in that sacred space of questioning, of yearning, of not knowing, she falls, she surrenders, she falls in love. You must understand, this is not an accident. It is divine engineering. It is the universe in motion. Machiavelli's words echo through time. Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that he who deceives will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. But what he didn't say outright is this: women are not exempt from this universal law. They are its greatest disciples, its most willing participants. The most legendary lovers in our collective history were not the kindest. They were dangerous. They were forces of nature. Take Lord Byron, the 19th century poet, whose energetic wake left a trail of ruined, yet utterly transformed women across Europe. He didn't seduce with flowers or promises of security. He seduced with divine neglect. He wrote passionate letters and then vanished into the ether, leaving them in a state of ecstatic agony. He would show affection, a warm sunbeam of his presence, and then withdraw it completely, plunging them into a cold, dark night of the soul. The women around him knew his energy was cruel, that it was a fire that could consume them. And yet, they fought for him. They wept for him. They destroyed their reputations for a single moment in his flame. Why? Because the human mind, in its quest for heightened experience, often mistakes pain for passion. It confuses the turbulence of the storm with the depth of the ocean. Psychologists have a name for this: intermittent reinforcement. It is the same sacred principle that keeps gamblers chained to slot machines, pulling the lever again and again, hoping for the unpredictable reward. When rewards are unpredictable, when the sun doesn't rise at the same time every day, the brain, the soul, the entire human system becomes obsessed. A man who is sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes attentive, sometimes distant, doesn't just occupy a woman's thoughts. He rewires them. He becomes the central organizing principle of her emotional world. Machiavelli understood this. His entire philosophy, his entire understanding of power, was built on the foundation of controlled unpredictability. He knew that a prince who was always merciful would eventually be seen as weak. A prince who was always cruel would eventually be hated and overthrown. But a prince who kept his subjects guessing, who was a divine mystery, that was a prince who could rule for a lifetime. Think of the last time you witnessed a woman completely obsessed with a man who treated her poorly. Was she stupid? No. Was she brainwashed? No. She was spiritually addicted. The dating advice of the modern world will tell you to be vulnerable, to communicate your feelings, to show consistency. But this advice, born of a desire for comfort, ignores the brutal, divine truth of our spiritual nature. The feminine soul does not crave safety above all else. It craves conquest. It craves the feeling of having won something precious and untamable. In Renaissance Italy, Lorenzo de' Medici did not secure his power by being loved by all. He did it by making himself indispensable through a masterful blend of fear, favor, and calculated unpredictability. He would lavish gifts upon his allies one day and then exile them the next. His enemies never knew where they stood, and because of that profound uncertainty, they never dared to move against him. This is the sacred secret of female desire. A woman doesn't truly want a man she can control. She wants a man who controls the emotional weather within her, a man who can summon both the storm and the sun. Now, let us journey together beyond the simple dualities of good and evil to understand how to become the man history warned us about, without becoming the villain. There is a man you know, perhaps it is a version of you from the past. He learned that kindness alone is not enough, so he swung the pendulum to the other extreme. He read the books. He learned the tactics. He played aloof. He mastered the art of the push and the pull. And for a time, it worked. Women chased him, their energy drawn to his manufactured mystery. They pursued him with a desperate, hungry intensity. But then, something strange, something inevitable happened. The moment he gave in, the moment the mask slipped and he showed real vulnerability, the moment he finally offered them the security they seemed to be chasing, they left, not with anger, not with drama. They simply vanished, like mist in the morning sun, just gone. What went wrong? Machiavelli himself hinted at the answer when he wrote, "He who believes that new benefits will cause great personages to forget old injuries is deceived." But he too missed one crucial, spiritual detail. Fear without purpose is just chaos. And chaos, when left unchecked, destroys even the most powerful bonds. This is the razor's edge that so few men have ever learned to walk. Our history is littered with rulers who understood power, but not the sacred psychology that underpins it. The Roman Emperor Caligula terrorized Rome. His energy was pure chaos, whimsical, cruel, and utterly unpredictable. He commanded the sea to attack him, then declared war upon it. He humiliated powerful senators by forcing them to run beside his chariot. For a time, it worked. Fear kept people in line. But then, one day, his own guard, the men sworn to protect him, stabbed him 30 times. Why? Because fear without an undercurrent of respect is unsustainable. It curdles into hatred. The divine feminine operates on this exact same spiritual principle. A man who is only dark, only mysterious, only unpredictable, creates obsession. But he can never create true, lasting devotion. He becomes a drug, not a partner. And all drugs are eventually discarded once the high fades, leaving only emptiness behind. Now, consider Augustus Caesar, the first true emperor of Rome. He did not rule through terror alone. He was a master of the illusion of choice, the subtle art of spiritual leverage. When a senator plotted against him, Augustus didn't have him executed. He invited him to dinner. He gave him a promotion. And in doing so, he did something far more powerful than simply instilling fear. He instilled guilt. The senator spent the rest of his life wondering, does he know? Is this kindness a test? A trap? This is the sacred secret that modern seduction gurus miss entirely. Women do not want a man who is simply cold. They want a man who could be cold, who has the capacity for ruthlessness and power, but who chooses to bestow his warmth upon them, and them alone. It is this contrast, this choice, that makes his warmth feel so incredibly valuable. Think of the last time a woman's eyes lit up when you playfully teased her. It was not the empty, formulaic nagging of a pickup artist. It was the confident smirk of a man who could walk away at any moment, but chooses to stay. That divine tension, the space between danger and safety, is where real, lasting power lies. Let me tell you about Dante and Beatrice. Dante was a poet who saw Beatrice only twice in his entire life, once as a child and once as a man. They never kissed, never spoke more than simple pleasantries. And yet, she became his muse, his obsession, the divine center of his greatest work. Why? Because absence, mystery, doesn't just make the heart grow fonder, it makes the imagination run wild. It creates a space for the soul to project its most profound longings. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that he who deceives will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. But the deeper truth, the spiritual alchemy, is this. The greatest deception is letting someone believe they have figured you out, while always keeping one sacred card hidden. This isn't about manipulation, it's about mystery. A man who reveals everything about himself becomes predictable. A man who reveals nothing becomes distant. But the man who reveals just enough, who creates a beautiful, sacred mystery, he becomes unforgettable. Here is what no one tells you. Women don't fall for the manipulation. They fall for the energy of the man behind it. The dark triad traits narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, they work in the short term only because they create an intoxicating intensity. But intensity without depth is just noise. The true masters of history, the Caesars, the Medicis, the Casanovas, were not just ruthless, they were layered. They were a symphony of contradictions. They could be cruel, then kind, distant, then intimate, unpredictable, but never ever random. This is the divine difference between a boy who plays games and a man who understands them. A boy thinks love is about control. A man knows it's about spiritual leverage. If this sacred truth has hit you like a lightning bolt, if you have ever felt the sting of being too predictable, too available, if you have ever watched attraction transform before your very eyes as what was solid becomes fluid, only to reform as something entirely new, then type "solve et coagula" in the comments below. Not as a symbol of manipulation, but as a sacred recognition of love's beautiful, chaotic, and mercurial nature. Dissolve and rebuild. This is the path of the alchemist. This is the path of the awakened man.